Hello to all. It is great to be back at a REDI event once again. I think this is my third year in a row, our third year helping to present this event, and it's just a delight to be back on this beautiful December day.
I'm the rookie.
In Redmond. Julia's the rookie,
the
but
rookie.
she'll be okay, we promise. And we have not memorized this whole thing, so
No,
we
we
may
haven't.
be reading from a script occasionally. But thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
We do appreciate it so much. So welcome to the annual event and the luncheon. I'm Julia Kelleher, and of course, I'm the co-anchor of Good Morning Central Oregon, brand new, the rookie. Only been on the job for 3 months, but I'm happy to be here with you today. So this year's theme, Impact, Ideas, and Insights in the Regional Supply Chain.
And I'm Alan. I'm on the evening end of Central Oregon Daily News. Again, delighted to be on the air here in Central Oregon. It's where I started my career in 1987, and it's great to loop back through and be able to bring the news to all you folks. We're going to hear a lot today about the challenges that a lot of you, and in fact all of us, have faced in the last couple of years with the supply chain, with the simple logistics of life and business in a time of a COVID pandemic. And we have some people who are very familiar with doing business in a very changing and challenging time who are going to help us out with that.
I think it cost me about $10 just to get here alone in gas.
Yeah,
You know?
all those
Expensive.
things. And throughout the program, we're going to be recognizing some of the sponsors who have been so generous to contribute to this event. And we're going to begin the event today with a sponsor message. This one's from COCC's president, Lori Chesley.
Welcome to the 2022 REDI Annual Luncheon. The incredible community of leaders gathered with us today is a testament to the strength of economic development in Redmond. COCC is proud to partner with REDI in support of workforce training here in the geographic center of our thriving Central Oregon region. This spring, COCC launched the Center for Business, Industry, and Professional Development. This new center, with offices in Redmond and Bend, offers in-person and virtual skill-building courses, entrepreneurial support from the SBDC, licensing and certifications, customized trainings, and more. With our degrees, certificates, and continuing education opportunities, COCC remains committed to helping REDI create prosperity through community and business development. Thanks for being with us today.
Lori Chesley, and we of course thank COCC for everything they bring to the community, for the programs that they offer, and the people who they turn out, the young people who come out of there with vision and with skills. Just a fantastic institution. Every year we also hear from the REDI director, the state of the Redmond economy. And we have a new director in Redmond this year, Steve Curley, and he is not able to be here, but he is going to visit us remotely. Here is his director's report. Steve Curley.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 REDI Annual Luncheon. I'm Steve Curley, the new REDI director. I've lived in the community for over 35 years and been a supporter of EDCO by serving on the EDCO board previously for over 9 years. In my previous work, focusing on technical assistance and training, I've partnered with EDCO, and I'm very excited to be working for REDI as the new director. REDI is a private, nonprofit corporation that for 35 years has been a partnership between private business and the public sector to encourage economic development in the city of Redmond. REDI's mission is to create prosperity through community and business development. The action plan to accomplish this is to increase the quality and number of jobs as well as capital investment in the community. This is an exciting time for economic development in Redmond. Looking back over the last few years, we can see the impact of the pandemic as newer projects were delayed. Those projects are now beginning to move forward again, along with newer ones coming into the pipeline. While this has produced fewer done deals in the last year, we are seeing that those numbers will increase this year. As we look at the current pipeline, there are 1,823 jobs with over $250 million in potential capital investment. A significant number of projects are now moving forward, which will land in the done deals in the next year. Comparing that to the last 6 years, those numbers show 40 done deals, adding 917 jobs with over $80 million in investment in Redmond. So our pipeline is robust and looking very good for the future. I would like to thank everyone for attending today. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there with you in person, but you are in for a real treat with our panelists. The supply chain has impacts in every facet of our daily lives. I know our panelists will give you valuable insight. Also, a big thank you to our sponsors and investors who make events like this possible. We truly appreciate your support of REDI and the work we do to support traded sector businesses in the Redmond community. Thank you.
And a big thanks to Steve, of course, and we can't wait to meet him in person.
Yep, Steve Curley, new director. So many local companies represented here today. You are the key to success in our region and also to this event, frankly. So we want to recognize them very quickly, and we probably will again as well. Hooker Creek, Pacific Power, and the Redmond Airport. And I can tell you, when I was in a freelancing phase and needed to get around the country in a hurry from my home in Powell Butte, this airport was a gem. Just a pleasure getting in and out of RDM. Thank them all for their support. Let's have a round of applause.
Now we'd like to take a moment to talk about Redmond's Youth Career Connect program. Now, many of today's young adults are looking for their career path, right? Well, Youth Career Connect, or YCC, provides experimental learning opportunities for students from high school, college, and alternative programs, offering real-world work experience from local employers just like you guys. We'd like to introduce Redmond's new internship coordinator, April Dunton, to the community. April, are you out here somewhere? Yes, there she is. Big round of applause to be recognized. Thank you so much for all you do. It's an incredible service.
And whether you're a student looking to explore a new career or an employer who wants to help support the emerging workforce, YCC can help. They can answer your questions. Just contact April. Again, she's sitting over at that table over there, and get all more information on how to get started with YCC.
Yep, youth are our future. Let's support them. Okay, now let's take a look at a message from Ben Broadband's Nicole Christensen.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicole Christensen. I am an Associate Manager of Field Marketing for Bend Broadband. We are excited and honored to come back as a sponsor for the REDI Annual Luncheon this year. We are also so happy to be a part of the Redmond community. Thank you for letting us be a part of your community, and thank you to REDI for all that you do. Bend Broadband offers TV, internet, and phone service for home and business, speeds up to 1 gig, and the latest in home entertainment with our TDS TV Plus platform. Please visit bendbroadband.com for more details. Thank you all for attending, and I hope you enjoy.
And thank you to Ben Broadband for supporting economic development here in Central Oregon. Now, without investors in REDI, we really wouldn't be able to do the work of bringing companies to Redmond. So next up, we're going to hear from one of the investors who has not only located their company here in Redmond, but are also growing and expanding and bringing more to the community. So please welcome to the stage Steve Bettis with Medline to tell us what investing in REDI has done for his company, Medline.
Thank you, Alan. It's good to see everybody. Before I get started, on behalf of the REDI board, there's a lot of familiar faces in the audience, not only investors, but we have elected officials as well. So could our elected officials please rise and be recognized? You know, REDI is really about a partnership, and all these folks being here today, along with you, it's a very important part of our business. What I'm going to talk to you about today is a little bit of a retention story that REDI participated in with the business I work for. And it's a little bit older story, but I'm going to bring you a different perspective today. So back in 2012, Medline Industries, which is the parent company of the division I work for, decided to acquire a company, a local company, has been here a long time, started in Sisters, moved to Redmond in 2001, and it was called Medisys, and they reprocess surgical devices. Medline, who's the largest privately held medical supply company in the nation, wanted to get into that space. So instead of reinventing the wheel, they went to acquire Medisys, and the family of Medisys, they wanted to exit, so it was a perfect combination. So they kept the original management in place, stayed in the leased building. It was over by the original Pancake House, and they learned the business. I joined the company 2 years later, at the end of 2013, and I've lived here quite a while, been in manufacturing in the area, was super excited, and the first couple of months they're like, okay, we understand the business now. We need to build a new facility, get you out of this lease facility, and oh, by the way, should it be in Redmond? Boy, I've lived here almost 30 years. I'm like, well, of course it should be in Redmond. Where else would it be? But look, it's a fair question. They've got plants all over the country. And so immediately got to work with REDI and John Stark and the team and put together an incentive package. And this incentive package was great. It involved county, state, local, did a great job, met with senior executives from Medline that flew out from Chicago, and we won, right? And that's, you're saying, well, Steve, that's what REDI should do. They should bring incentives, they should retain businesses. Well, since I've gotten to know the company a little bit better, I've learned it wasn't all about the incentives. It was really about the local commitment. When those executives flew out and they met with REDI, they met with the mayor, they met with the city, they met with state officials, they wanted those face-to-face meetings to look them in the eye and say, does this community want Medline's presence? And that's truly what REDI did there. They facilitated those meetings. They showed how genuine the will of the community was to have a business like Medline. Because what Medline knew is they knew what the investment was going to be. Since that day, we built a brand new plant out on Hemlock. It was $12 million. They did not send a general contractor out from Chicago. We hired one here. Now we're in an expansion, another $16 million. It's all being handled right here. So that's the kind of investment and retention that REDI can do. And it's not always about the incentives. It's about those face-to-face meetings. I thought that was very important to share because my perspective has changed. So at this point, I'd like to recognize some of those key players in that. So John Stark, the former director of REDI, who's still attached to us through EDCO. But John, could you stand to be recognized for all your efforts in that retention effort? And then Mayor Endicott, you were in those meetings as well and showed that the community wanted Medline to stay. Could you rise as well? And then look, you don't get to build a building, buy land, go through permit processes without great involvement from the city. And it has been wonderful, both in the expansion and in the original build. So Keith Wachowski, could you stand to be recognized as well for your leadership with the city? All right, so I've got two name tags on today. You just heard from Steve Bettis from Medline. Now I'm going to let you hear from Steve Bettis, the REDI board member. Because John, who's fairly strategic, he came to me after this whole thing was done. He said, hey, why don't you join the board? Sorry, my mouth's really dry from this. Didn't bring my water. I'm like, okay, I'd like to join the board. That'll be great. I didn't know how great it was going to be. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Look, the board is a working board. It is an outstanding group of people. We challenge each other. We help each other. Michelle and I were talking last night before the event. She made a great comment. She said, Steve, I learned something at every board meeting. She's right. I learned something at every board meeting. I learned about businesses that I wouldn't have known about, other industries I wouldn't have known about. It's a great board. I'm so happy I'm part of it. I'm proud to be part of it. And at this time, I'd like the board to stand, please, and be recognized. So look, organizations like REDI, we don't exist in a vacuum. There's a lot of you that are already investors, and we, the board, we truly appreciate that, the whole organization. But if you're here for the first time or hearing about REDI for the first time, or you've heard about it for a while, and you're thinking that you want to make an investment so we can continue to do what we do, we'd love to have you, right? There's all different levels of sponsorship. There should be a QR code coming up that you can link to. If not, we have a wonderful website. You can become an investor there. You can talk to any one of us board members that are here, but that really makes a difference. So I'd like you to consider that if you would, please. And then lastly, if you're an investor or maybe thinking of becoming an investor, consider being a board member. It's a wonderful board. We work well together. We get a lot done. There's a lot to be proud of. If you want to take your community service to the next level, we'd love to talk to you. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. And now let's turn to the screen, and we're going to hear from our friends at Summit Bank. Gary O'Connell.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gary O'Connell, Central Oregon Market President for Summit Bank. Thank you for joining us today at the REDI Annual Luncheon. REDI is a shining example of a successful partnership between private business and the public sector. Summit Bank's support of REDI dates back about 7 years when the bank became an investor at the urging of several board members at REDI. Looking back, the countless names and faces we've encountered and the stories we've shared over the years in Redmond, many with the involvement of REDI, there is one clear takeaway. REDI is a tireless advocate for business growth and vitality in the community, and it is working. Summit Bank continues to support REDI's efforts to move, start, and grow your business. As exciting as our investment and support of REDI has been for the last 7 years, we are even more excited that with the aid of REDI, the best is yet to come for Redmond. Once again, thank you for joining us today and enjoy the REDI Luncheon.
And thank you so much to Summit Bank for their support of REDI.
You know, it's been quite a couple of years, hasn't it? I remember a moment in our newsroom 28 months ago, something like that, when I turned to my co-anchor at the time and said, you know, they just locked down a city of 11 million people in China. What the hell's happening? And we have been through some interesting years and a lot of impacts on all of us, on the supply chains, on the systems that have been developed to get goods from here to there to us, to our table, into our gas tanks, et cetera. And we have a panel of experts here to share some of their observations on what's happened, some of the fixes, some of the challenges, and what we can expect moving forward.
So let's get started to introduce those amazing people who are going to be speaking with you today, starting with Joe Anzaldo. Joe, COO of Newport Market, and Oliver Lemons, and ask him to join us up on stage. Come on up, Joe. Now, just a quick introduction of Joe and his career here. Welcome, by the way. Joe has a grocery store career that would have started at 10 years old if it weren't for being too young. Child labor laws. Yeah. Well, he tried to get a job at Jiffy Market in Eugene, Oregon, but they informed him, couldn't happen until he was 14. So after a stint at a chain supermarket, joining Newport Avenue Market in 2004 was a natural progression for this guy in his career. Leaving a corporate store for an independent store has allowed Joe to show his creativity at Newport Avenue Market. Joe has played many roles over the years, from traveling the nation, looking for the next best thing in food, gifts, housewares, to learning to build Newport-style displays under Debbie Dory's tutelage. So Joe loves working with people, customers, and employees, which is why the grocery business is a perfect fit. Welcome, Joe. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you for joining us.
Next up, we are honored to have Jana Jarvis, presently the President and CEO of Oregon Trucking Association. Jana, please step up and join us. She has more than 20 years of public policy and management experience in the corporate and trade association environment. Back in 2010, she established her own public policy firm specializing in issues around tax policy, land use, environmental quality, natural resources, real estate, manufacturing, and of course, transportation policy. Quite a list. Prior to that, she served as Vice President of Public Policy for the Oregon Association of Realtors, where she led them to unprecedented levels of grassroots participation and political fundraising. Jana, thank you for being here. Much appreciated.
And last but certainly not least, we have Jim Sansburn, CFO of Hayden Homes, and of course, an important community leader. Jim, come on up here. I'll introduce you. So 10 years ago, Jim Sansburn joined the largest private home builder in the Pacific Northwest, Hayden Homes. Welcome, Jim. Today, Jim serves as the CFO and oversees the accounting, finance, and banking relationships for the Redmond-based company, building over 2,000 homes per year to hardworking families in not only Oregon, but Washington, Idaho, and Montana. Now, prior to working for Hayden Homes, Jim earned a degree from the University of Washington and held positions at 4 prominent home builders in the Puget Sound area, including Quadrant Homes. Jim has 3 kids, all full grown, right? And lives in Central Oregon with his beautiful wife, Paula. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
And now that we have all our panelists on stage, we're going to toss them a few questions, and then we'll have a brief period where you all can raise your hands and also have some questions for these folks if you have them.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the first question, guys. How has the disruption of the supply chain impacted your business or industry? And I think we'll start with Joe first.
Yeah, no disruption to grocery. Right? No, obviously a lot of disruption. Thinking of in the very beginning, the panic around, we joke about being out of Pop-Tarts or certain cuts of pasta, but in the beginning, if you remember, like being out of sanitizer was a big. People didn't know, so they were pretty freaked out about that. Clorox, and then the infamous no toilet paper. That was a big deal, and continues to be at some sort. So I think the out of stocks is a big one. The staffing, so if we kind of get into like the truck showing up at whatever time of day or night, oftentimes probably 3 or 4 times. 2 o'clock in the morning, getting that phone call to be like, you got a truck in your parking lot, can you come down? Okay, yeah, I'll get down there to get that freight in. So I think that was something that was impactful to me personally there. The unpredictable load, we talked about that, not knowing when those trucks were coming, but bottom line, having to get it into the store to get it onto the shelf for you guys. And it's funny, kind of lost sales on one side, so not having product to sell, but then on the flip side, having huge sales when we did get product. So it's kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth there, but when you walk in and literally have no toilet paper, obviously you can't sell it. But they'll buy, meaning you guys will buy whatever you can get. Even down to, I gotta say this, I got in trouble on toilet paper from whichever federal agency monitors pricing. Because I had a $6 roll of toilet paper on the shelf. And so I got a phone call on that, and what it was, I was like, do I have a $6 roll of toilet paper on the shelf? So I went down there and looked, and what it was one of those large rolls of toilet paper, those like 18 inches wide and in the, whatever those places, on the highways or something. And so we had put them in plastic bags and sold them for like $6.29. Of course, they cost me $6, so I made 29 cents on it. But I thought that was kind of a fun toilet paper story I'd give you guys. So that would be my
Jana, what's
start.
your thoughts on this? How does the supply chain impact you?
Thank you. I hope that doesn't keep happening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's great to see all of you and see your interest in this particular topic. And I think it's important to note that over the last couple of years, we've come as a country to see just how important our supply chain is. And incidentally, as representing the trucking industry, how important our trucking industry is. 72% of the nation's freight moves by truck. 80% of the communities in Oregon are only serviced by truck. Trucking's pretty darn important if you're looking for goods. So when we shut down in March of 2020, there were some interesting dilemmas that happened. The companies that were shipping product to manufacturing companies that were closed down all of a sudden didn't have any business, but companies that were hauling toilet paper to Joe's stores were overwhelmed. So it created some real highs and lows in the market, and I spent a lot of time those first few weeks trying to help even out some of those shortages. But things like raw materials like wood products, My husband worked for a construction company based out of Vancouver, Washington, and they shut down completely. We didn't shut down here in Oregon, but a lot of the commodities that supply the housing industry did shut down, and so that affected trucking in that arena. So by the summer of 2020, we were pretty much back up at full speed, and in fact, more than that, because consumers shifted their buying power. Where they'd been putting money into vacations and trips and events, they started looking around their houses. They were sitting there working virtually all day long and thinking, I need to fix this, or I need to paint, or what if we added a room, or all of those kinds of things. In fact, my husband and I just did one of those projects during the pandemic, and you couldn't get a parking spot at Home Depot. I mean, you just couldn't, even early Saturday morning practically, because everybody was rushing to get things like that done. But the supply chain issues kind of came in fits and bursts. So once we got through that initial phase, we kind of leveled out, but trucking demand was up exponentially. And we have seen that continue until about the first quarter of this year. And what we have seen is, and some of this is, and much of this has been impacted by the fact that we are offshoring so many of our goods. China is responsible for shipping a huge amount of the consumer goods that you all buy. And when they went into lockdown, those ships didn't move. And then when they started moving, they all descended upon LA and Long Beach. At one point in time, in the first quarter of this year, there were more than 100 large container ships off the LA Long Beach ports. Once that started getting cleared up, and it isn't completely cleared up, but there was some movement to fix some of those issues, many of the container ships decided to avoid LA and Long Beach and start shipping to the East Coast. And so now you've added cost to your goods because you've added several thousand miles on that ship. And so we've just had a host of those kinds of issues as time has gone on. In addition to that, China is now back in lockdown. And all of a sudden, we're realizing how offshoring is impacting our ability to get goods. And people are starting to look, and companies are starting to look at nearshoring, building manufacturing plants in Mexico, for example. And I think one of the interesting things that'll come out of that is for the trucking industry, it will actually increase demand, because where now China is hauling the raw materials and the finished products to the manufacturing plants and back, if we move manufacturing back onshore or near shore, there'll be a lot more trucking activity to move the raw materials and the finished products from the manufacturing facility. So it's going to be an interesting thing to see going forward, and I would expect to see some long-term changes out of what we've experienced in recent history.
Yeah, thanks. I figured since the pros have got notes, it's okay to have notes up here. But so we've been impacted in a myriad of ways. To start with, our cycle times, the time it takes to build a home have been lengthened by about 30 days, which is about 20% of our typical cycle time. That's a combination of certainly supply chain issues, but also just issues resulting out of the pandemic, where jurisdictions where we have to get a building permit from, people were working remotely or weren't working, and so it lengthened the time to get a permit. To get a plat recorded in one jurisdiction, we would have to take the Mylars, it's a big piece of paper that shows what all the lots look like, put it in a bin outside the building. It would have to sit there, I think, for 3 days. Then someone would come pick it up, and they'd work it through the signature process. So that adds delays at the very beginning of the effort to get a home built. So that's impacted certainly our customers and made it for a less positive customer experience when there's uncertainty about the delivery of their home. Direct costs in the last 2 years, from February of 20 to February of 22, are up about 40% for us. That equates to about $80,000 per house, which is obviously very significant. We're also starting to see a lot of increases in the cost of land development materials, such as pipe, and whatnot. So those increases are still coming through the system. And of course, shortages, delays, and discontinuations have impacted us and our customers. everything from appliances, vinyl flooring, paint, garage doors, lighting, cabinets, cabinet hinges, cabinet pulls, you name it. Switches, igniter switches that are affecting HVAC in fireplaces, lumber, siding, roofing, you name it. Just about every component in the house we've had to deal with shortages, delays, or substitutions. So our purchasing department has had to make a lot of changes in the way they operate. Instead of just worried about renewing our annual contract with our suppliers, they're weekly putting out fires. It's a different fire every week, and it's a different fire in every region. South Idaho might be out of garage doors, and South Washington has no paint. And every week it's something different. So as a result, we've had to really increase our communication, both with our field team and with our suppliers, to be on top of and try to anticipate and be proactive about addressing these issues. So there's a lot more communication. We've got longer lead times to deal with. Our cabinet supplier informed us that the lead time would go from, on ordering cabinets for a home, would go from 5 weeks to 10 weeks. So virtually doubling the time it takes to get the cabinets delivered, which puts a big hole in our schedule, obviously. We've also had to limit options for our buyers, whereas previously we would offer 3 types of appliance packages: black, white, or stainless steel. Because GE, who is our appliance supplier, was focusing only on stainless steel production, we eliminated black and white options from our selections for our home buyers. And also, because of uncertainty about the ability to deliver on commitments to our buyers, we've had to eliminate washers and dryers and refrigerators from being offered as an option in our homes. We've done things like bought inventory. Again, speaking of appliances, we would buy 5 to 10 sets of appliances to hold an inventory in each one of our 5 regions, so that if we did have a delay in delivering the specific appliances for a given home, we could pull it out of inventory, then replace them when those appliances that were for that home are ultimately delivered. And we bought 6 months' supply of lighting fixtures in advance, just to be out in front of that in anticipation of shortages there. So our customers have been impacted. We've had to substitute materials. Just recently, our vinyl supplier came to us and said, we're no longer going to offer this whole line of vinyl. And we've had, probably over 100 homes that were in production where the buyers had already made their selections. So we have to go communicate with the buyer, tell them this is no longer offered. Now, and it's typically the things that get canceled are the lower end materials. So that means that we get to offer them a step up, but without a change in the price we're charging, of course. So that's just some of the impacts that we've experienced in the home building industry and Hayden Homes.
The next question, and you can toss away your notes on this one, and we're going to start with Joe. We heard a little bit about that right now, how you've reacted to the challenges that we've seen with supply chain issues. So one quick example of the way you've been able to pivot, been able to be nimble, and deal with some of those very specific challenges caused by the disruption in the flow of goods and services. We'll start with Joe.
Well, we are fortunate being an independent market because we can do whatever we want, right? So we're not tied. In other words, like Albertsons most of their distribution comes from their single distribution center, and so if they can't get anything there, they're kind of stuck. As an independent, we actually work with probably 4 or 5 major distributors. So when one goes down, we can adjust to another one. So we may not have the exact same pasta, but we can go somewhere else. So that helped us a lot, being able to move between distributors. And then in the beginning, I will say, I don't know if you were in our stores much, but again, kind of that creative piece was purchasing from restaurant supply. Again, we're allowed to do that because we're an independent, so we make our decisions. But a lot of the restaurants that shuttered, there was a ton of food sitting in the warehouses is for restaurant supply. So we're talking like 50-pound bags of flour, right? Big boxes of pasta. And we didn't have anything on our shelves, so we got a hold of some restaurant supply places and said, just get us that product. We're going to repack it and then put it on our shelf. So it wasn't the prettiest thing, but honestly, within a couple months in, you guys really didn't care. You just needed flour because you were learning how to bake again, like your parents. And we just needed yeast and flour and all the things, canning jars, all of that kind of stuff. So it was really cute to watch everybody go back to their childhood when mom and dad taught them how to do that stuff, and they forgot since then. But it was glad that we could help with that.
Jana, a couple of points in the trucking industry that you were able to adapt to so you could move forward?
Well, I mentioned earlier that as the pandemic started, there were huge demands in freight as of like about summer 2020. And it was because people, as I mentioned earlier, were looking for goods rather than services. And we're now starting to see this slow. In first quarter of 2022, spot market prices for freight are starting to decrease. And there have been some interesting results from that. When freight prices were going up, a lot of companies that had drivers that were employed by them, the drivers started getting interested in becoming an owner-operator. And so they went out and leased a truck, started hauling freight from the spot market because they could make more money. And so companies were struggling to have enough employees to meet the demands that they had contractually made a year or 2 or 3 years previously. When the slowing has started here in this first quarter this year, we're starting to see those drivers coming back. And it's interesting that the ODOT saw over 1,000 new trucking companies in that 2-year period of time. And I think there was an assumption that that was just additional freight, more capacity. But in many cases, it was just a change in capacity from a company truck to an owner-operator truck. And so there wasn't that much change in volume for freight. We'd been tight for drivers previous to the pandemic. In 2019, we announced we were 60,000 drivers short nationally. And that's a big number. And trying to find folks that are interested in driving has been a difficult challenge for us. When the pandemic started, these poor drivers, in many cases who were running established routes that they'd run before, were all of a sudden unable to go in and use the restroom facilities at the warehouse they were delivering to. Many states closed their rest areas. There was no place to stop for them to get their 30-minute rest breaks. So if you were one of those people out on the road during that period of time, you might have seen a lot of trucks parked along the freeway because they're mandated to get rest at certain periods of time. And so it just put a lot of strain on the job. It was interesting to me because I've done this job now 7 years, and I very seldom hear from drivers. But for the first 6 months of the pandemic, every day I would hear from 2 or 3 drivers who weren't necessarily working for companies that were members of OTA, but they were in Oregon, and they were unhappy about something, and so they looked up Oregon Trucking Association and found my number and called me to complain. And interestingly enough, one of the things that they complained about was not also being able to get food. Many of the truck stops closed. They closed their food operations. So now you don't have a place to use the restroom facilities, you don't have a place to rest, and you can't get any food. There's an appealing job, right? And it really created some challenges for us. I think one of the days I felt most successful was the day I talked the McDonald's Corporation into allowing a semi to pull into the parking lot, order a meal online, and get somebody to deliver it to them. That took me weeks, but it was helpful. So those are the kinds of issues that we were dealing with. Interestingly enough, the highlight on the trucking shortage has now escalated nationally, and if you noticed, just last week or the week before, I've been traveling for over a week, so I've lost track of time. President Biden announced on the White House lawn that they were going to create these apprenticeship programs to encourage more people into driving schools to get their CDLs. And so there's a real national emphasis on trucking now. And I think as demand comes back, and particularly as nearshoring and onshoring comes back to this country, the demand for trucking will continue.
Jim,
Yeah,
your turn. Some of the ways you found to get around some of the problems presented.
yeah. Again, I mentioned earlier we're organized in 5 different regions, and when we had a shortage of a material in one area, we would see project managers from the I-5 corridor filling up their pickup truck with material and hauling it up to Spokane, if they had a shortage of paint or millwork or whatever it may have been. So we shuffled materials back and forth between our different regions, and that was just an exceptional effort by our team members. I mentioned earlier about stocking up on certain materials and fixtures in the home, like the appliances and lighting fixtures. I think certainly, like every industry and every company did, we figured out ways to work remotely. It's been hard on our culture. Our culture is very inclusive. We like being around each other, but we went for 2 years without seeing each other, and that was tough. But we figured out ways to be flexible, be nimble, and still get stuff done.
Thanks, Jim. So, with all these supply chain issues, not only with goods, products, labor shortages even are out there. Is there a breaking point? I mean, inflation is at a rate that we haven't seen in 40 years. What is that breaking point to you guys as businesses? Have you thought about it, and what are your plans to kind of tackle that before it happens? We'll start with Joe.
I don't know why I always go first, but yeah, I was actually talking to Michelle about this when we were a couple weeks ago, but I didn't understand the question. I was like, I don't understand what you want me to say about a breaking point. And so we had a little discussion over the computer, and my point was, in my mind, there is no breaking point for a grocery store because you guys have to eat. It kind of goes back to that first responder. Like there's just no choice. You're not going to break. You're gonna morph. You're gonna change. You're gonna figure it out. Kind of like I said about restaurant supply, and the sky's the limit. So to me, there is no breaking point. There's just a changing point, and that changes all the time. And we just have to be smart and think. And being an independent, love that part because we can. I've got a credit card in my pocket right here that belongs to Newport Market, so I can just whip it out there and go buy something, which is kind of fun because a lot of companies can't. So really no breaking point in my mind, just adjusting and adjusting quickly. So I like that part. And then, but we did also talk about that, I think I don't think we're going to be going back to the way it was. And by that, I mean, like, we used to have windows that the truckers would show up, and you had a 2-hour window. If they didn't show up, you sent the truck on somewhere else, and you had people to complain to. You could call the warehouse. You could do all kinds of things to make sure that never happened again. Well, that ship sailed in 2020. There was no, like I said earlier, 2 o'clock in the morning, we'll take it. And then the distribution centers changed the way they do things and their expectations, and the truck drivers changed their expectations. So there's a ton of change that happened in the way we typically would get product from distribution centers and the structure around that. And so flexibility became a huge piece in this business model of supplying grocery stores. And I don't think it's going to go back. I think we learned how to flex. And that's just the way it is. We're going to stay flexible, and we're going to take groceries where we can. Truck drivers now expect that flexibility. Distribution centers now expect that flexibility. So I think that is a big piece that just is not gonna go back around structure. And I will say around the food thing, the truck drivers, we recognized that they couldn't get food, and so my CEO Lauren said, "Hey, why don't we give these guys lunch? Like any truck driver that shows up coming from Portland, we're so thankful they're here. Why don't we just buy them lunch?" And so we did that for probably at least half of the year until everything settled down. So any truck driver that came from anywhere, we would just say, "Hey, do you want a lunch?" And the deli would make them a sandwich and a pop and a cup of coffee, and off they go. So that was near and dear to my heart.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. Did you let him use the restroom also?
Yeah, we didn't shut our restroom.
Well, you are the exception and not the rule, apparently, during this pandemic. But supply chain issues have affected our industry as well. And it's interesting to think about. I've talked about some of the labor issues, and I forgot to mention that the cost of, the two big costs in trucking are labor and fuel. And the labor costs have gone up dramatically. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that Walmart announced that they're going to pay over $100,000 for CDL holders. So there's a great opportunity in our industry, and I want to emphasize that to any of you who are looking for a career change or have a child who's looking for what they want to do with their career, because there are great opportunities. And trucking isn't like it was many years ago. It isn't all long haul, and it isn't Rocky and the Bandit. It's a very different kind of industry today. But labor costs have gone up dramatically, and in addition to that, fuel costs have gone up. So yesterday I was looking at Fortune magazine this morning. Diesel has now gone to $5.56 a gallon. That is the highest price in recorded history. Inflation is running at 8.3%. And guess what's driving some of that inflation? You got labor costs, you got fuel costs going up exponentially with no end in sight. And so until we resolve some of those kinds of issues, it is going to continue to make your cost of goods far more expensive than you are accustomed to. In addition to that, we've had trouble getting, and it's an irony, of course, because we're picking up and delivering goods all day long, but we've had trouble getting parts for our trucks. If any of you drive up and down I-5 and you see a truck yard, you're going to see a lot of trucks parked along the fence. And that's because they're needing parts. Maybe they don't have drivers, but my company members are now going out and pirating their parts off a truck that's a little bit older to use on a newer truck because they can't get them. I have one of my members who had bought a brand new truck that was supposed to have all the bells and whistles on it, which has all the collision avoidance and lane departure and all those fancy things that beep at you if you do anything wrong. And this poor driver was driving up I-5 in Northern California in the middle of the night, and someone had stopped and left their car in the middle of the freeway. They weren't there, and that driver hit it. And it did about $85,000 worth of damage to his truck. And my poor member then discovered the truck didn't have all the safety stuff on there that he had bought, but he didn't know it because they're short and they're just trying to get trucks up and get them delivered. Used trucks now sell for almost the same cost as a new truck did 3 or 4 years ago. New truck sales have gone up 35 to 50% if you can get them. And at the same time all of this is happening, we are in Oregon deciding we want to move out of diesel trucks and into ZEV vehicles, electric Class 8 trucks, for example, which are incidentally not available yet. And those trucks cost 3 to 4 times as much as a diesel truck if you could get one. I have members that have had orders on hold for 2 or 3 or 4 years. And so there's a lot of talk about changes in technology in our industry. And we are on the cusp of change. And I tell members of my association that trucking is going to see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 100. But what that change ends up looking like is hard to know at this point in time.
Yeah, a breaking point for the housing industry, for Hayden Homes, I know, is when our customers can no longer afford the price of a home. I mentioned our direct costs on a home are up by $80,000. Our land development costs are probably up $20,000 a lot, plus the cost of the raw land is gone up significantly in this overheated market we've been experiencing. So those all obviously impact the cost of the home to the buyer. And that's exacerbated, of course, by raising interest rates that we're going right now. Jana referenced inflation, and we know that's impacting interest rates. For our home buyers, every half a point of interest rate increase costs them about $140 a month in their mortgage payment. And since the beginning of the year, interest rates are up about 2%, so that's a little over $500 a month different mortgage payment today than 5 months ago. That has a huge impact on our buyers, particularly our target buyers, primarily a first-time buyer or first-time new home buyer. and they're significantly impacted by that cost. And not necessarily directly related to the pandemic or supply chain issues, our industry is impacted significantly by regulation. And the governor's executive order, CFEC, Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities, CFEC, it dramatically increases the required density, minimum density in urban areas in the state of Oregon to approximately 25 units per acre. That means that kills single-family detached housing, which is what we do. So that, to the extent that is allowed to continue, that has a significant impact on our ability to deliver our product to our buyers. It removes choice from the consumer. It limits choice to 8 stories and plus high rises, and so it has a significant impact. So I got a little commercial here. There's a website, peopleforanaffordableoregon.org. If you're interested in this issue and want to learn more about it, please visit that website, peopleforanaffordableoregon.org. And also, there's a virtual public hearing tomorrow on May 21st. There's information about how to attend that or view that on the website. And in addition, I believe there'll be handouts available as you exit the building today. If you're interested in that topic, you can pick up those handouts. I'll give you information again about the website and the public hearing tomorrow. So those are some things that I think would be considered breaking points for our industry.
Thanks so much, you guys. Well, in the interest of time, just so we're not running over and honoring everyone's time here, final question. Is there, we've heard kind of a lot of negative things going on here, and it's a bummer in a lot of cases, but is there a silver lining to all this? There's got to be something positive. Can we finish with that? We'll start with Jana this time.
Thank you.
Gee, thanks. Well, I was hoping to get the next question because I wanted to build off of Jim's comment about the governor's carbon executive order. Not only did that impact DLCD, but it impacted Department of Environmental Quality. And it is going to change and has a tremendous amount of mandates for the trucking industry, impossible mandates that will be very, very costly to try to even comply with. And that in conjunction with the one that Jim mentioned, which was going to make it virtually impossible for us to deliver products to these communities. I mean, I sat on that rulemaking committee and I said, you want little 23-foot wide lanes with parking on both sides, and how are you going to get a truck in there to move people in and out of those apartments that you're building? And how are you going to get goods to the stores that you have on the ground level? And this is not one of the countries on the other side of the world where they might take a refrigerator on a bicycle. I don't think we can deliver them that way. And so there's a lot of uncertainty here in the future. But the silver lining to me is there's an election this year. And if you think about it, and I lobby, I've lobbied in Oregon been registered lobbyist for 22 years. I work with everyone. But at the end of the day, this is a policy discussion. That's really what this is. What do we see our future as Oregon? And while we may have the same goals in terms of having this be a beautiful, environmentally friendly place to live, there are a group of people with their mandates that are going to make it very hard for you to continue living in this state. And so I'm going to ask you to think about that. I haven't even had time. I was on a plane last night, got in late last night, tried to get online this morning and look at some of the election results. It's going to be a very, very challenging election year. And if you haven't voted in the past, vote. You need to be involved. And if you haven't really spent a lot of time studying your candidates, do it. Go to their town halls, go to their events, hear what they have to say. More than just the sound bites you see or you hear on the radio or you see on the TV. We need people who want to help us get our economy back up and running. And I don't care, and I love this quote from Betsy Johnson, I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat, you have to care about Oregon. So that's the bright spot for me this future.
Jim?
Yeah, I think some bright spots, some silver linings are, we've had to pivot, we've had to be flexible, we've had to be more nimble. It's forced us to dive deep into our systems and processes, how we operate our teams, how we do things so we can do things faster and easier. We've learned how to work remotely. I mentioned that earlier. I think because of the trade or because of supply chain issues, it's forced us to engage in some new relationships with suppliers and tradespeople out there, which is some of those are going to bear fruit down the road. Give us some insight into some different materials that we can incorporate into our homes. I think it's also forced us to evaluate the way we communicate with our buyers, to really amp up that communication, set better expectations, and to focus on a great customer experience in difficult times. For the most part, customers have been very understanding, but it can be pretty frustrating when the house gets pushed out 30 days, 60 days. Right now, we've got a community in Prosser, Washington, where we're waiting on a part for a pump for the water system that is, the houses are done, but we can't get C of Os because of this pump issue. And home buyers are running up against the end of their interest rate locks. And I guess I'm going back into problems instead of silver linings, aren't I? But it seems to be more of those than the latter. But I think overall, we just learned how to do things differently. We've learned how to be more nimble. We've increased our communication with our buyers, and coming out of this, we're going to be a better company for it.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, I think the team building that we all talk about has been impressive. I think to me, I always have joked around. I have little sayings, I joke around a lot, but one of my sayings is, well, we're just selling milk and bananas. Let's not make it too difficult. Meaning calm down. Like, let's just sell groceries. But it was really interesting, and a lot of passion came out of the grocery, people needing food when we got to the essentials of I need food, I need gas, and I need medical. And I hope a police officer shows up if I need them, But there was a lot of emotion around that from the customers, and it was really genuine. I'll use the word genuine there. Genuine love and admiration for what we did. So where I'm downplaying it as milk and bananas to keep everybody calm, it was really interesting to see, for me and my chosen career and our coworkers, and I think hopefully for my wife, seeing that what we do matters in grocery, along with housing and transportation. But I think that genuine piece is the silver lining to me that really gave me a sense of pride of being a first responder, of having people in their cars literally in tears as you're bringing the food out, and you're just like, wow, like you don't get too many opportunities like that. So I think to me that was right there.
Thank you so much, everyone here. We're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. We're just going to have one of the panelists answer each question. But yeah, we can kind of wander in the audience, or we can just repeat the question so that folks can hear it okay. Does anybody in the audience have anything to ask these three wonderful people here? Oh, we have a microphone out there. Fantastic. Perfect. Okay, who was my first question? Let's see here. Right here, in the front, all the way up in the front. Yes, I'll just come down to you. How does that sound?
Thank you for being here today. For the trucking industry, we hear it all the time as bankers and as it pertains to the supply shortage. But and then we hear reports that trucking demand was down in Q1. How much of that do you attribute to seasonality versus alternatives like rail and air? And then a second quick one, we are also starting to hear more recently about the cost of diesel could exceed $10 a gallon. How probable is that? Thank you.
So during the pandemic, I learned a valuable lesson, and that is not to say, oh, that can't happen. So in terms of your latter question about the price of diesel, I don't know what to say to you. I mean, our industry uses diesel because it's a far more energy efficient fuel. You get a lot more mileage with your truck than you would with more refined fuels. But the situation with Russia is complicating this, and not because we depended so much of their fuel, but because Europe did, and now they're trying to buy from us. And so the world demand is changing dramatically. Remind me your first question. I'm sorry that I started with your second.
Trucking demand down Q1.
Yeah, so I think, and I just came from the American Trucking Association's mid-year conference yesterday, and we talked about this a little. Our economist seems to think there's going to be a little bit of a dip, some adjustment, as economists like to call it, as people spend more of their dollars on travel and other things through the summer months. But coming this fall, they expect to see some of that freight volume return. And some of that is because China's been shut down. You know, you read about the lockdowns in China. So a lot of the goods that people were wanting to buy are still on a boat someplace, or maybe they haven't made it to the boat yet. And so it's a little hard to predict at this point in time. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the whole concept from a long-term perspective, if we would do a little more near-shoring, building manufacturing facilities in Mexico or Canada or right here in our own country, I think that will make a lot of difference in terms of freight demand.
Could build it in Redmond. Good idea. Another question? Anybody out there? Raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. Right there.
You're going to hold it? Okay. Let's see, who do I want to ask this from? Okay, grocery store, Newport. Thank you for being here. So when does inflation exceed people's ability to pay for food? Incomes up across the country, so we're at 8.3% inflation. When does this, from your perspective, get to a point where customers can't afford to walk in the grocery store?
We're not going to leave it on a good note, I guess, Julia. That's silver lining. Geez, John, I don't know that answer, quite honestly. I mean, I think we're going to pivot, right? So maybe we're going to bring in cheaper products, do things in bigger quantities. Those are trends that are already changing. So the Wincos and the Costcos and the Walmarts are seeing large increases on top of large increases from the pandemic. But now they're attributing it to saving money. So we're more of a specialty store. I'm a little panicked, so thanks for bringing that up. But we'll pivot. We'll figure it out. In the middle of, as you know, building a commercial kitchen here in Redmond. That's a $4 or $5 million project, so that'll be cool to things like that will be able to lower our cost of goods to our stores, to our delis, so we're not producing it so much in the store, but here in Redmond and then running it. So that's an investment that we're doing. Obviously, our stores in Terrebonne and Sisters, Oliver Lemons, trying to get that kind of expanse. But it does worry me because all of those reasons why we're building the central kitchen and a corporate office is to grow our business. And here comes inflation, and we're talking about saving money. So that, again, thanks for bringing that up.
Can I add 10 seconds to that? I just want to give you a little personal anecdote. I have a stretch of garden at my house that I love to grow flowers. And this year, I'm seriously considering my husband's request to grow vegetables instead.
Any more questions from the audience? Anybody raise your hand, we'll get you a mic. Right here.
Got one for Jim. So we talked a lot about affordable housing here in Redmond, but right now we're definitely behind the curve in terms of new builds and general home supply. I'm hard pressed to find any housing in Redmond right now that's under $425,000. So as new homes are being built, when do you, if ever, do you think that housing supply will catch up with the demand, and do you think that pricing will taper off?
Well, there's an easy question. Yeah, that's hard to address. We certainly are doing everything we can to remain affordable. So we are offering smaller product. We've got a community here in Redmond where we've got homes ranging from 600 to 1,000 square feet that are less than 425,000, and we'll continue to drive it towards smaller homes. I think on the housing industry as a whole is looking for different ways to deliver homes that can be more cost efficient. I think there's a project in John Day where they're going to be 3D printing some homes. I don't know that Hayden Homes is going to be doing any 3D printing of homes anytime soon, but we're aware of those technological changes that are coming, and at some point we're going to have to address them. Other things are modular homes, having homes built in a more of a factory environment, a controlled environment, and delivered and assembled more quickly on site. Time equals money, so the faster we can do things, the more affordable it can be. Panelization is another way to address that situation. Right now, land prices are at higher than I think we've ever seen them here in Central Oregon, and so when demand slows down, we may see those costs start to come down. But and I think when we get past some of these pandemic supply chain issues, things that have been impacting our business, hopefully we'll see some of our raw costs start to come down. I don't know that we're going to see labor come down, because there's definitely a labor shortage in our industry. We lost an entire generation of tradespeople during the GFC, the global financial crisis, and the people have not come back into those jobs. So that's going to be exacerbated as the generations that's now retiring, boomers like myself that are retiring, are leaving the trades and finding replacements. As Jana spoke to in the trucking industry, same issues apply in housing and construction. So there's a lot of challenges to get to where you want to be and where we want to be. We want to be affordable. We want to be affordable to the area median income family, and we want to at least be able to offer a product that's affordable to that family, and we're struggling more and more to do so.
By the way, you would have seen that story about computer printing homes in John Day only on Central Oregon Daily News. And thank you for that.
Nice pitch, Alan.
Yeah. Well, everybody else is pitching.
I know,
figure I would
right?
too.
You
What
might
the
as well
heck?
give us one too, right?
And we want to thank our panelists, Joe Anzaldo from Rudy's Markets. Rudy's Markets? Is that the? That's the corporate name. Okay. Newport Market and Oliver Lemons, as we know them. Jana Jarvis from Oregon Trucking Association. Jim Sansburn from Hayden Homes, for sharing your stories and being willing to answer some questions. Much appreciated.
Yes. And of course, we would like to thank the title sponsors of this amazing event every year: Ben Broadband, Central Oregon Community College, Summit Bank, and our presenting sponsors, Pacific Power. Oh, we have gift baskets, don't we? Oh, we're going to do the raffle. That's right. Are we doing raffle now? Did I miss it?
I think we have a raffle.
We do have raffle.
Does
first.
somebody want to
then
describe?
Then I get to thank everybody.
You folks are going to have to stay on stage here for just another
stay
moment.
here.
The raffle is going to be described right here.
So Joe and the people at Newport Market and Oliver Lemons have made this fantastic basket. If you've never had one of these, you've never sent one to anybody, you should. They're phenomenal. And thank you, Joe, for contributing that to...
Look at you, Vanna. You look great.
Yeah, look at you. You're great. So this is what their baskets look like, every one of them that goes out of the store. They're beautiful. So if you draw a number...
There's cinnamon bun mix in there. Yummy. Chocolate, lots of chocolate.
If there's wine in there, I
Ooh,
see it.
That's the best part.
Okay, here it is. So the ticket number, 817-6817.
Anyone? 817. You have a winner! Woohoo!
So you
Thank
can
you.
come back next year and tell us how wonderful the basket items were, okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joe.
What's your name? Whitney. Congratulations, Whitney. You get the cinnamon buns.
And we have one more very important thing to do. If we could have all the panelists right up here on stage, just right in the middle. Okay, now I need you to stand with your backs to the audience. Come right near the front of the stage. Julia and I'll be here.
Oh, are we doing a selfie?
We're doing the all-important communal selfie. Come with me, Julia. Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
Everybody has to smile and wave their hands in the air. That's lame. Come on. All right.
You got it. Again,
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to title sponsors, which I already announced. Presenting sponsors, Pacific Power, Hooker Creek, Redmond Airport. Supporting sponsors, Miller Lumber, Mackenzie Cascade, and Mid-Oregon Personnel. Of course, the venue, Deschutes County Fair and Expo, generously provided the beautiful venue today, so thank you so much to them. And a special thanks to Umpqua Bank Home Lending for brightening their tables.
Love them all. And finally, Central Oregon Daily News, just proud to be back for a third year at a REDI Luncheon. We hope to see you again next year for number 4.
Don't leave me hanging here.
No.
High five.
All right.
He's leaving me hanging.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.